Okay, good evening and welcome to our Windows to the World event. The students in the nursing program went to Mayfield, Kentucky and worked with the Fuller Center for Housing, and we also toured the local area, and now they want to share their experience with you. We had 8 students and 2 faculty, and we had a lot of time, a really good time, and I asked them, this was the part that kind of made me laugh, I asked them at the end, I said, what did you like the least about the trip? And they said the ride, because it was, 9 hours in the van. I said, what did you like most? They said the van. That you rode in the van. Anyway, they liked the camaraderie in the van, because that's when everybody got silly, or everybody took a nap together, made their own space on the seats. So they really got to know each other, and we got to know them too. So it was a really fun and good experience for Trip for Learning. So I will turn it over to the students, and I hope you enjoy it.
Hi guys, so I'm Serenity, and to start off, I'll just be telling you a little bit about Mayfield, Kentucky. So Mayfield is considered to be a home class rule city, which means that any regulations or laws that they have, they can pass them as long as it's not prohibited, as long as the state laws don't prohibit it. Mayfield is also considered to be the county seat for Graves County. So it was founded by John Anderson, and John Anderson and his wife settled in Mayfield, Kentucky in 1819, and they built a little log home on Mayfield Creek. Okay, so I know you're wondering, why isn't it called Anderson and why is it called Mayfield? So here's a little story. So a wealthy Mississippian by the name of George Mayfield was kidnapped and held for ransom in that city, and in captivity he engraved his name into a tree, I guess in hopes that someone would know that he was there, and he escaped and was shot and fell into the creek and died, and so that creek was named after him, as well as the nearby town. So just to lighten the mood. Okay, so So in the 19th century, a railroad was actually built to connect Mayfield to the outside world. And once that happened, it just jump-started the success for Mayfield. Manufacturing became a very big thing as far as the Mayfield Woolen Mills, which was created in I believe, 1860, if I'm not mistaken. And so the main industry for Mayfield was manufacturing, and then they also had a part in the tobacco leaf production as well. Okay, so fast forward to the 20th century. We're gonna start off with the Mayfield consumer product success. So in 1998, an American family-owned company by the name of Mayfield Consumer Products began, and it was very successful. And it started with branded candles and home fragrance products. And so in 2018, the firm invested over $8.3 million to expand the company operations. And now in the 21st century, Mayfield has a population of over 10,000 people.
So on December 10th, 2021, Arkansas, Missouri, Illinois, and Kentucky were hit by a tornado outbreak consisting of 71 tornadoes. As one of the tornadoes were heading north, it went through Graves County, hitting Mayfield at 9:26 that night. So thousands of homes and properties were destroyed, including the Mayfield County Courthouse and the candle factory. And in this picture, you can see that in 1925, the tri-state tornado hit. So in 2021, this was the quad state, where it went through all 4 of the states. During this time, there were 24 confirmed deaths, and at least 200 people were injured in Mayfield. The following July 2022, the population census for Mayfield had dropped to 9,971 in the western Kentucky region. The damage done cost more than $3.5 billion. Everyone involved in this tragedy lives were changed. Families could not find their loved ones, houses were demolished, and left most people with nothing but a memory. It was dark, no one knew where anything was because there were no buildings left to tell you. The street signs had been blown over, and there was nowhere to know where you were standing. Could you imagine? Somehow they found positivity, even though everything around them was barely recognizable. They found a purpose and hope, and they still loved and helped one another. To get through this time, they all were helping each other look for their belongings because there was no way to tell, where your house was. And in this following slide, I have inserted a video so you could all see firsthand and hear from people that were impacted by the tornado.
Well, we have spent the last hour here on WHAS 11 News telling you about hope and tragedy. But now, let's just listen to our fellow neighbors whose lives have been changed since the weekend.
Last night I thought it was as bad as it could possibly be, but you come back in the daylight and it's even worse than you thought the night before.
This is just something that you see that happens other places. You don't think it's going to be here.
Hear this loud boom, and every window in the house exploded. The roof was lifted. A chimney fell.
There's nothing left. I mean, we lost our barn, our garage, and house, and
just saw his wife, and the worst came to mind. Okay, I thought maybe I will never get to see him again.
This is my home. I came out of that hole in the center.
I was just thankful that I handed him the grandbaby when I did, because he got her downstairs. And because if I would have still had her in my arms, I don't know what would have happened.
There's people that lost everything, that have lost family. There are people that haven't even been found yet. And we're just so blessed. And I hate it for those families, and I'm praying for them.
But I mean, we're all alive and doing well, so that's all that matters. Couldn't ask for no better.
They've lost everything, but yet they're still laughing. They're still loving. So it's just been a blessing.
My friend and I both said we have cheated death. And I think it's because of God's grace. And I'm not done on this planet.
So in that video, you could see how, they didn't even know where each other were. They were looking for their family members. People had died. They had no idea. And then in the next few slides, we're going to talk about the candle factory where some of the people were missing and they had to find their family members there as well. So these pictures we took when we went this past March, and the damage that was done in 2021 is still there today. So in this image, the lights are still out. They're using stop signs. In this picture, that's a car. And you can just see this is a new water tower that they have, but there's still damage today. And that just goes to show you everything that they went through.
So this is the candle factory, the before and after. It took a direct hit from the tornado. So the Mayfield Consumer Products Candle Factory was the third largest employer in Graves County. It produced products for several top global brands, including Bath & Body Works. Prior to the tornado, it employed 501 individuals. At the time of the tornado, there was 101 workers present in the factory. Several of those workers happened to be inmates that they were trialing a new state program through Kentucky. One of the victims was Deputy Jailer Robert Daniel. He is said to have pushed them to safety moments before impact. Since then, a class action lawsuit has actually been filed against the company on behalf of the candle factory workers. They were told that they would be fired if they didn't show up to work or left early. Since then, 250 of those workers have been relocated to a town about 10 miles away in Hickory. The other 250 workers were laid off as the company did not have any room to accommodate them. This mass layoff resulted in many of the former employees having to leave the Western Kentucky area. And these are the lives that were lost at that candle factory.
All right, to kind of switch gears up, in addition to doing the Fuller House activities, we also visited the Graves County Public Health Department down there. Their mission statement is to promote the lifelong physical and emotional well-being of our community through the provisions of preventative health services, health education, and environmental services. And their vision statement is to be a healthy community where residents can achieve optimal health in a clean environment, enjoy protection from public health threats, and can access quality health care. We are committed to working together to enhance, promote, and protect the health of Graves County. So that's what they're kind of about. If you go on their website, they have a lot of educational and public health information that you can access pretty easily. Pretty much the basic things that you would want to know in a community, you know, your restaurant ratings, what to do with animal bites, private water samples, and then a big one, how do you do the, here, is the emergency preparedness. So as we all were learning about the tornado, this came into big play. So. The emergency preparedness team at the Graves County Health Department works in cooperation with local emergency response agencies and the State Department for Public Health to develop plans and procedures to prevent and limit health effects resulting from catastrophic events. And in a video coming soon in the next slide, we'll see that even when there are plans in place, you kind of have to hit the ground running when things happen because you're not really sure how things are going to unravel. So even though there's a plan, you got to be ready to kind of bounce in and just work with it. And the team down there includes a planning coordinator, a regional epidemiologist, and a regional training coordinator. And the kind of cool thing about it is that the One Medical Reserve Corps, you can sign up and volunteer to do that and get training in order to be part of that team. So I thought that was kind of cool. And then switching back to kind of us as nursing students, we did hear a nurse that was involved with it firsthand. And it kind of made us think about things like, what do we need to know as nurses? Like, we have to be knowledgeable about, you know, what's going on. We've got to be helpful for others. We got to be brave, because if people are looking for help and your nurses who are supposed to be taking care of you don't look like they're emotionally okay, that's not okay, because we got to be there for them. And kind of be their rock. Considerations as nurses we would also have to take are like, what vaccines might these people need? Hydrating individuals to make sure there's clean water. Maybe we have to bring in shipments of clean water bottles so that people are hydrated. Any injuries from the disasters, and then also working well with first responders, to include EMTs, firemen, policemen, and even volunteers. And then this is our key speaker, a nurse that we spoke with, Riley Beth Willett, and she is the Graves Health Department Director.
Was one of the hardest things I've ever done, because there was stuff everywhere. There was stuff all over the roads. I still don't know how I had 4 tires left on my vehicle, because a lot of people, you know, their tires blow, they get a flat or whatever, and they couldn't get to wherever they were going. So I was very fortunate that didn't happen to us. So it took a long time to get there. And once we did, we just started, okay, here we are. You know, what do we need to grab that we have, and where do we start? So there were walking wounded just coming from every direction, just everywhere. And to me, it almost, what I would envision, like people who would come from like the 9/11 attack, from that, I would envision them looking very similar to that. They were covered in insulation, is what it looked to me like. So from just head to toe, and they were wet because it was raining. So you can imagine what that might look like. And they were coming with their babies and their dogs, and just, you know, anyone and everyone that could gather there got together. Some of them were hurt, some of them were not, thankfully. And so we were doing our best to get them in there, to get them under the roof, get them out of the rain. And at that time it was warm, which was really weird. It was in December, so typically it's pretty cold then. But that day it had been like 70 degrees. So it was warm at that time. But of course, when you're wet, you know, you feel a little cold anyways, or chilly. So we were getting them blankets and food and water and everything. Trying to make sure no one was hurt, and if they were, we did our best to take care of them. So that's where we spent a good amount of time there later that night, and all these hours kind of go together because we were up for days at a time, or I was. So it was hard to keep up with time thinking back. But as I think back, I can remember more and more of what happened. The one staff member that I could pull, my nurse, one of my nurses, she had a daughter about 2 blocks down from where we were at a nursing home. And the tornado hit that nursing home terribly. And I have no idea how, but no one was hurt. No one was hurt. And I'm pretty sure they had over 80 residents. So that was a miracle in itself. So anyway, she wanted to check on her, had to make sure everything was good there, at that nursing home. And of course she wanted to check on her daughter. So we had headed that way. And as I think back now, trying to get there again, there was debris and you name it, whatever you could imagine being on the roads, it was there. So we were walking in tangled up electrical lines all over. So as we were walking, I'm thinking, dear God, please don't let me die tonight as I'm walking across this. I don't want to get electrocuted, right? We didn't know if there was a hot wire or not. We didn't know what was dead or what was not. So we did get there. When we got there, we didn't know we were there. I could walk these streets normally with my eyes closed, right? I've grown up here all my life. I could drive it with my eyes closed, I feel like. That night, you could not, because you didn't know where you were. Of course, it's dark anyway, but you still didn't know where you were. Everything was demolished. So once we got to the nursing home, I had met a man in the middle of the road, and I guess it was the road at the time where I was standing at, and he had his vehicle on with piled full of children. With some of them had half their clothes on, some of them didn't have any clothes on. I mean, they just got them out of bed, and threw them in there. And they wanted somewhere to go. And we said, sir, you're going to have to walk. You can't drive. You're going to have to walk if you need help. So I said, if you'll hang right here, if you'll just wait, I will grab some of these babies and help you get them to where we're going. Again, that's a very risky situation too, considering what we had just walked through. So whenever I was talking to him, I said, where is the nursing home? He said, you're standing right in the parking lot. So I didn't know that. It didn't look like anything. There was just rubble beneath us. So that was very eye-opening and very scary to us. So we got to check on the nursing home, on the residents there. The staff was doing phenomenal. I mean, it was amazing what the staff members there did for those residents. Like I said, no one was hurt. And so my nurse actually stayed with them to keep them going and helping them out. I had went back up, and about that time, of course, the mayor and the judge, we were talking to them, and they had mentioned we've got to get a triage going. We've got to get some things going. We've got to figure out where all these people are going to go, everything. So we had decided to go to Mayfield High School, which was on the other side of town. It was not affected, and to set up a shelter, a temporary shelter, and a triage all in one. And after several hours and trying to find Health Coalition trailers that were loaded down with all kinds of supplies for a disaster like this, we did find those. We did get them there, but we rode on a rim of that trailer because the tires were blown. I think an ambulance was thrown in the side of one of them. So you can imagine how hard it was for us to get these trailers out. We had to have them. They had all kinds of good supplies that we needed and to get them where we needed to go. So that was a big challenge. At this point, through all of this, I had finally gotten a hold of some of my other staff members And it was just kind of luck that I got a hold of them. And they eventually met me at Mayfield High School. So our big task as a health department that I didn't, we were just the ones that stood up and said, yeah, we're going to do this. Let's take this on. So we went into Mayfield High School, and thank goodness for that superintendent and that principal there. They were very welcoming and ready to go and able to help. And so we did exactly what I said. Half of it was a shelter, and I bet you within 2 or 3 hours, you could feed an army of people. I mean, people just brought all kinds of food and pillows and blankets and you name it, water, everything that you could imagine. That was very helpful. On the other side of the building was a triage that we set up, and all the materials, the items that we got from our 2 trailers were in this triage. So it wasn't ideal necessarily to have both of those in the same location, but you just got to do what you got to do, right? So our candle factory was, and I'm sure you've probably heard of that story before. If you haven't, it was hit by the tornado, and it was a really big deal. They lost several lives in there. The building collapsed on top of people. So this is a giant building, and a lot of equipment in there and things like that. So we were getting people from the candle factory that made it out, and we were getting people from some apartments that are downtown that got hit. So all these individuals, a lot of them were older, some of them were younger with children. So I'm going to say it's probably 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. That's my guess. And you're trying to console babies, and they're tired and they're wet, and it was just a disaster trying these old women who are in wheelchairs, getting them in. We did have some people come in with bones sticking out of their legs, and we weren't able to take care of them in that capacity. So we had to get them where they needed to go. Our hospital was completely full, couldn't get anyone in, so they were taking people to other hospitals. Ambulances were, they didn't have a free ambulance to take anyone in.
So kind of just reflections as student nurses after we heard her. It was a huge privilege to hear from her, and she really gave us a really good insight on the roles of being a nurse, and just really a good leader out there. You want to be able to, like I mentioned, be there for the people, and then be ready for whatever's thrown at you, because you don't know, one day everything's fine, and then the next day you can be hit by this huge disaster and everything completely turns upside down.
So we were actually partnered with the Fuller Center for Housing in order to go and work on these houses. They are actually based out of Americus, Georgia, and it is a nonprofit organization that builds and repairs homes for low-income families and individuals. Believe it or not, they're currently active in 60 U.S. cities and over 16 countries outside of the United States. Their mission statement was something that I really connected with. It says, the Fuller Center for Housing is a faith-driven and Christ-centered that promotes collaborative and innovative partnerships with individuals and organizations in an unrelenting quest to provide adequate shelter for all people in need worldwide. Calvin was also on the trip with us, and I'm going to show a video of him. Unfortunately, he is not able to be here tonight. He is in a nursing conference in Nashville, but he wanted to put in a couple of his own experiences.
Hello, my name is Calvin Schramm. I'm in my 3rd semester at Georgia Southwestern State University as a nursing student. I went with nursing students and faculty members to assist Mayfield, Kentucky after it had been devastated by a tornado. This EF4 tornado obliterated homes, leveled the community, and destroyed the livelihood of families. In nursing school, we are taught to provide patient-centered care. While a patient can be an individual, it can also be a community. There were many opportunities to help rebuild the community. One opportunity was to help rebuild homes. The work consisted of tearing apart broken foundations, renovating land, and establishing firm foundations for houses. Until the trip, I had little to no experience with construction. This trip allowed me to expand my skill set so that I can provide better patient-centered care. There are many things in this trip that I've never done before. I've never been on a roof. I've also never applied roofing, but I do have a basic understanding of safety when it comes to construction. This was vital when teaching others to use power tools. Since there were many things that were new to me, I'd also believe that there were many new things that other people have never experienced. I made sure that everyone in our group did at least one thing that they had never done before. For some, it was using a power tool for the first time, and others, it was preparing shingles for the roof, like going in and cutting it and getting it to the right size and measuring it. I enjoyed learning new things and how to do it the correct way, and I feel like this really helped teaching other people how to do some of the stuff that we did in the construction. So past learning experiences always shape people to become better. Fundamentals of nursing guided my approach in helping the community. Assessment of a patient is the first step of the nursing process. In this case, the patient is the community, so I was able to gather information about the status of the community. Public health nursing is beneficial to the community. It allows for treating the patient, in which the patient is the community. Public health nursing permits tailored treatment for the individuals of the community. So basically, by taking care of the community, individuals are also treated. Individuals consist of the community. And so again, taking care of the community as a nurse sets the standard as how individuals should treat each other. So the trip to Mayfield, Kentucky was very enlightening. We witnessed how tragedy can tear apart lives and cause extensive issues and affect the overall well-being of the community. So just by us simply just rebuilding homes, that had a really big impact on them, so that way more people can have places to live and a roof over their head. There were many people that came together to help the community. There were people from all over the United States. They offered to volunteer. Some people who were skilled in certain trades like plumbers, electricians, and construction workers came to assist. Volunteers, again, were from all over the United States, and they served an example of putting one's needs before your own. One of the many roles of a nurse is to educate the patient. In this case, the patient is the community. So we would want to make sure that the people who were helping, like as volunteers, knew how to do the right thing. So that way nobody would get hurt, because safety in the construction is very, very big. So just an example of that would be making sure that when you cut a certain way that you're not going to cut a finger off, because that's just not what we need to happen. So just knowing where to put your hands when you're cutting things, or how to use one of the power saws. We learned a lot of things with this. There were things that we had learned previously in other classes that we were able to apply here. Again, one of those was just looking at a community and learning, okay, so what do we need to do to help these people? And one of them was construction work. It was building houses and renovating floors and painting doors and setting up the land so that way the house won't fall apart or anything like that. I think we built 2 houses in the span of a day, or it was we got the foundation set up for the houses, and we got four walls and a roof set up. We were able to do that relatively quickly. We worked with construction.
So right here, 325 South 15th Street, this is a picture of what the house looked like before the tornado hit. And this is what they have rebuilt in that area. There was nothing left but the foundation. Right across the street is 322. We worked on this site as well. And as you can see down here, this is kind of what that entire neighborhood looks like. It's nothing but foundations, and inside of those foundations is so much debris and insulation and electrical wires that has to be cleared before you can even start building. This is the layout that Mayfield Fuller Center House actually bought for development. There's several different lots on here. We worked on 3 of these lots. This wouldn't be possible with the amount of volunteers that were there. I mean, there were people traveling all across the country. There's been countless amount of donations, and just the people that we met out there. I mean, some of them were coming from up north, and there had been people out there that were working for at least a month. I mean, just free labor, just coming to help. These are a couple of the photos from the job sites. As you can see, there's tons of debris in both of those foundations. This is the inside picture of what we got from the picture before, what it looks like on the inside. Over here, we were breaking down like a previous storm shelter that they were going to actually rebuild for the entire community into the side of a hill. They were taking them out of the houses and putting in a community shelter. Here's Calvin up here on the roof, doing some roofing. And here's us girls learning how to use some power tools. This is more pictures as well, just kind of painting things in the house that we had already developed at 325 South 15th Street. And just getting these foundations ready for new homes to be built. Believe it or not, while we were there, we had the chance to see a couple that was coming in to actually get this house. And they were touring the house, and they were very, very grateful at all the work that had been done and what they were going to have after the fact, because they have spent 1.5 years with nothing. This is Mel. He actually is the vice chair of the Fuller Center of Housing, and we actually got to have dinner with him the night before we attended the job sites at a Majestic restaurant there in Mayfield. And this is just his insight on actually what is still happening now. As y'all know, this happened, almost 1.5 years ago now, and this was from March about their current struggles and still what they're going through.
Before the tornado came, they had nothing to begin with, and their nothing blew away, and they had nowhere to go and no money to do anything. And they were put in the parks and the hotels, and everybody did the best they could, and now we're slowly rebuilding. And so some people are getting way above anything they'd ever hoped or dreamed for, and the others are still waiting. In here is about the long-range disaster recovery group. They've got caseworkers. They have done 76 cases. 1.5 years later, they still have 280 people they hadn't done a casework on. We hurt. We can't get to it. Can you imagine? I mean, nothing they've done, just to follow the law. The ones they're working with, we're getting houses. The ones they hadn't, just sitting there. So, on that cheerful note, this magazine shows the hope we have. And had it not been for the Amish and the Mennonites, we'd probably have 10 houses. Well, we got over 60 or 70. And Samaritan, I want to repeat it, Samaritan's Purse is a real thing. We often go out here and go, what's these things? They were here the first day. When they pulled in, they had 5 these big covered trucks with everything you'd need to clean up the yards. And they'd have a group come in, groups, they'd go out, and then they'd come back at lunch, and they'd go back in the afternoon. They did that for weeks.
The magazine that he's actually talking about, we do have a copy up here if any of y'all are interested in looking.
Before the tornado.
Just so you can get an idea as to what destruction and what stuff they're going through. He actually helped publish this magazine and put it out. So it's up here if anybody wants to take a look at it. There you go, Jason.
All right. So during our last full day, we explored the Amish community and just delved into their fundamental principles, which prioritize faith, living a disciplined and humble life, and fostering a sense of community. They attend church every other Sunday at a member's house to renew their faith and solidify their connection with the community. And then their way of life is centered on these beliefs, and it was very enlightening just to witness their dedication to these values. So their faith, we have family, community, and simplicity. With the faith, they demonstrate their religious beliefs through their own actions of discipleship, plainness, non-resistance, forgiveness, and nonviolence. Their family, they place value on time spent together and their connection with each other. So they run family businesses together, they always eat as a family, and they attend church services together, barn raisings, and then other community events. It's not unusual for them to have 7 to 10 children, and because of their heavy involvement in community, their children learn to have a strong work ethic from very early on. The Amish elders are considered extremely wise, so the younger adults look to them kind of for advice. And then community, the Amish separate themselves from the rest of society, so because of this, it just offers a very unique support system. They're willing to freely give their time and skills to help one another, and this is what they did in Kentucky. So they just dropped everything to build houses for those who lost theirs in the tornado. The church members, they're urged to help each other in everyday life and even in times of difficulty and disaster, and that was seen after the tornado. Simplicity, they believe simplicity is a sign of humility, so they don't use electricity, technology, vehicles, or any other modern activities. They take the biblical commands to separate themselves from worldly things, so they believe that worldliness will keep them away from being close to God. They live simply, without fancy clothes, TVs, iPhones, because they feel like this can intrude into their lives and just allow them, they want to remain focused on their faith and their family. And then their styles, they're practical and modest, so they make their clothes at home just using some plain fabrics. All right, and then next slide. All right, so this is our day with the Amish. We stopped at an Amish bakery, which is that first picture there. And then right across from that bakery was the garden, which is the second picture. And they probably had some of the best desserts that I've had. And then our next stop was the general store. And that actually had some homemade healing salves, essential oils, other ointments for health improvement. And they actually had some handcrafted wood furniture. Then the next place we went to was the leather shop, which is that third picture. And then at the bottom left, you can see kind of what's in there. And we watched him make saddles from scratch. He helped customize some belts for Dr. Slocum and Miss Snyder. And then also helped us make collars for our dogs. So then after that, we went to kind of like a fabric and quilt store. And that's those two bottom pictures. And we asked kind of how they deal with illness. And the lady, she explained one of the tonics that she made. And she said that she uses garlic, horseradish roots, onions, and ginger, and it's all cured in vinegar for 6 months, and then it's strained. And then at dinner time, they give 1 teaspoon for each person, and then they start giving it more frequently if they're feeling a little bit more sick. And then if you look in that middle picture, that is a quilt that Miss Snyder got. And it's made out of a flour sack, and it was made by an Amish woman in her 90s. That's it.
So one of the other places we visited was the Mayfield Graves County Need Line or Food Pantry. So they had a couple of different services there, USDA and Community Pantry Foods Program. So those are the low-income families, so certain requirements there. The Commodity Supplemental Food Program are for those that are 60 and older and also income eligible. These two programs definitely took off after the tornado, especially with those who lost their homes, there's people laying out in hotels, motels. These came in handy, those. They also assist with utilities, doctor's visitations, prescriptions, and homelessness. They also work with referrals to other community agencies and offer volunteer opportunities. This is the director we met with when we went to Mayfield. He gave us a tour of the facility. He showed us kind of their process of packaging, how much food each family gets, showed us their refrigerator, their freezer, could store food for months on end. Some of their commodities include fruits and vegetables, canned meat, cereals, juices, crackers, cheese. How it's funded. So it's a nonprofit, faith-based charity. So churches around the town donate food, money. They serve approximately 350 families per month with emergency supplies. It's funded on food and cash donations brought in by members of the community. All financial donations are 100% tax deductible. In addition to food donations, the food pantry spends about $3,000 a month on food to help families.
So in light of everything that we had did in the beginning of the week, we actually got to visit the National Quilt Museum as part of our trip. This was actually located in Paducah, Kentucky. The National Quilt Museum actually collects and presents some of the best work by contemporary quilters from America and all around the world. And we were lucky enough to get a view of this. I think this really challenged our expectations of quilting. These works were absolutely incredible. It is clear how much time and effort these artists had put into these works, and just to see them up close was just quite exquisite. These were two pieces that I absolutely loved. Not only were they massive, but up close and personal. They were very detailed. The one on the left-hand side had so much going on. It clearly took them months to create. And the one on the right just had such beautiful detail to it. I just couldn't believe that these were quilts. So they had different rooms for exhibits, and this was an exhibit that was going on while we were there. It's actually called the School Block Challenge. It's an annual quilt block competition that they do for children K through 12 nationwide. It's actually sponsored by Moda Fabrics, and what they do is they include 3 key pieces of fabric that must be in every single block entry in order for you to be able to enter it into the competition. The entries are K through 4th grade, 5th through 8th grade, and 9th through 12th grade. There are cash prizes that are awarded, and all entries get to remain in the exhibit during the first quarter of the year, and then they're actually returned to the students when they're done. This piece over here was just an honorable mention. It's from the 9th through 12th grade. And it just caught my eye because in the first part of the week, we had been dealing with devastation and mass destruction and people who were hurting in a community that needed help. And so it just reminded me that no matter what life hands you, you just got to keep rolling with the punches. I really liked that piece. This was actually the first place for the 9th through 12th grade. It had amazing 3D detail. And she actually named it Colorful Silence. And up here she said, what keeps my heart happy is colorful silence. These were the winners. Right here was the K through 4th grade winner. And this one was the 5th through 8th grade winner. They have an overall grand prize. This was awarded the grand prize. It's the 5th through 8th grade category. It is called Suffering by Lily Nisi, and she actually attends the Immaculate Conception School in Columbia of Illinois. And some things I thought were interesting, they had 327 students participate, so there were a lot of these to view. We really enjoyed looking at them. There were 338 entries overall, which was their highest number in a single year, and 32 states actually got to be a part of this. So without further ado, I don't know how much y'all realize, but Dr. Slocum and Miss Snyder actually hand quilted this quilt. They put a ton of hard work, time, and effort into this. This was actually put out for a raffle for us to be able to attend this trip. And if it weren't for them and the money raised and everybody that got to buy a ticket and be a part of this raffle, I don't know that we would have been able to go on this trip. We'd also like to thank the School of Nursing faculty. We also had another event called the Super Bowl that we participated in, and we had so many faculty members in the School of Nursing that brought soup and also bought a ticket, and they also made little soup bowls to go with it, and we could not have done it without y'all. So thank you so much, and give them a round of applause.
All right, so another fun thing we got to do was visit Land Between the Lakes, which is a national recreation area, because, you know, it's spring break. We got to enjoy ourselves, too. So since 1963, Land Between Lakes has managed 170,000 acres of forests, wetlands, and open lands on a peninsula between Kentucky and Barkley Lake in western Kentucky and Tennessee. The area offers one of the largest blocks of undeveloped forests in the eastern United States. A truly timeless place that includes miles of trails for biking, hiking, horseback riding, picnicking, boat ramps, and tons of wildlife. And the motto is to come outside and play. It was a little cold when we went to Kentucky, so we did not get to do some of those boat ramps and picnicking. But we did see a lot of cool animals. We saw some bison, we saw some elk, and I'm not originally from Georgia or anywhere here. I'm from Chicago, so I've never seen a bison in the wild. So it was really cool for me to see that. And then before we end our presentation, we would like to just say a special thank you to not only Dr. Slocum and Ms. Schneider for taking us on this trip and allowing us to do this, but also for the support that GSW School of Nursing has given us. So while we were at the Quilt Museum, if we can have any of the nursing faculty come up really quick. So Florence Nightingale, she once said, "So never lose an opportunity of urging a practical beginning, however small, for it is wonderful how often in such matters the mustard seed germinates and roots itself." So we got this little quilted Florence Nightingale for the nursing department. So we wanted to say thank you as our appreciation. Thank you, guys.
And they have a couple more pictures that y'all had kind of going through, and y'all can play that.
Yeah,
so
sure.
maybe y'all can see a few more pictures.
Well, so can we all stand up and introduce ourselves so everybody will remember our names? I'm Rhonda, Dr. Slocum. This is
I'm Florence Nightingale. I'm Miss Snyder.
I'm Serenity. I'm Megan. I'm Shannon. I'm Miranda. I'm Quincy.
And Cassie.
And Carly.